But but what I do have to say is that she basically was like, you're a vegetarian. That's how our family has been. So I'm vegetarian, in the fullest sense. But I know, like, we had a Swamiji come to us recently. He came from about a year ago, a summer ago. He came, and I could tell that he was from a more conservative mata when it comes to how closely, like, we are not Hindu. We are definitely not Hindu. We are our own sort of sect, and we have nothing to do with Hindus. We are completely different. So he said that you cannot eat meat or you cannot drink because these sort of, when you drink, you act crazy in a drunken stupor, or when you eat meat, you are depriving a creature of its life and you're violating some sort of non-violence principle. But I guess my question is, if you aren't directly killing the animal, or if you still are a really good Virashaiva, you just choose to eat meat, what happens if you're the most active member of your community? What happens if I were to say, like, you eat meat? Does that make you any less of a Virashaiva? And, I guess that's a question to toss around. And I think that's really controversial, as you said, so we should probably not discuss it too much. Sure,
No,
sure. Could we actually pass the mic back there?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
My friend is insisting that I should speak. The 1, 2, 3, 4. First of all, I want to tell you how Virashaivism has helped me. Over 40 years ago when we started, we had the same question, why Virashaivism? Some of our friends were saying, no, this is casteism, and we should not go. So we crossed over and said, stuck to Virashaivism. As I have traveled in VSNA, gradually I have learned to read vachanas. You have to read over and over again, because after we are told, be good, we are good one day, next day we go back again. You keep repeating. Then some of my peer friends recognize a few years ago I had a setback in my health. After retirement, I think by the time I retired, I had burned down. So I went through Virashaivism, which according to me starts basic is kayaka, good hard work, dasoha, sharing, which I do, linga posture, linga yoga, leading to meditation, yoga, pranayama. After that, you have Vishishtadvaita and all those things. So I started practicing these. Yoga practice, pranayama, and vachana study bring balance to my life. So now I am talking to you like this, which I could not about 15 years ago. So I advise all of you, Virashaivism is applying Virashaivism every day. That is Kayaka, Dasa, Yoga, Pranayama.
Thank you.
One sentence. I won't take much time. Since Botswana 800 years back, it took 800 years for United Nations to cite 32 human rights. And if you look back, Botswana propagated those human rights. If all through his vachanas, dignity of man and labor, Vachana saw those rights 800 years back. You should be proud of that fact, but Botswana foresaw what United Nations saw 800 years later. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Just I want to, okay. Just I want to add to Mr. Hiremat's comment. Food is one thing, but the language, bhasha enadala, that we need to teach our language, our mother tongue. That is very, very important. We can translate and all, but if we can teach our language, that connects more than the, food. The bhasha is very, very important.
Yeah, so what I would like to say, going back to all these past comments, if you look at some of the other religions, you look at Christianity, you look at Judaism, you look at Mormons, what are they doing? They are teaching the children from a very young age. It's a systematic way of how they teach. In fact, the Jews, they teach the Torah in the original language. And then they have a ceremony, when somebody has gained a certain amount of competence. I hope that, as a person who's younger, brought up here, to be part of that discussion, all of the elders here to be part of a discussion to see how we can systematically teach. I don't want to say this, but you see Muslims, they teach Urdu. The kids can read the Quran. I hope that one day, our community will get to be like that. Every, Lingayat community in whatever city, they will have a small school or something. Even the Bhagavad Gita, they teach them. So a small school where it was systematically taught. See, the vachanas we are talking about, simple vachanas. But as you go, further and further, they are much more complicated vachanas.
Right.
Going into the Shakti, Vishishtadvaita, Siddhanta, all that we need to know. The history we need to know. And that will give that foundation. You look at the Mormon kids, by the time they finished high school, they are good enough to go to other countries. They are good enough where they can inculcate those philosophies into the other people that they meet. We too can do this. Every one of our youth can be a light. They know who they are. They know what the history is. They know what the vachanas say to guide and to guide others.
That's excellent.
So
Thank you so
I
much.
hope that somewhere at some point we can come together to make that curriculum that we can, implement.
Excellent. Thank
That
you so much.
I beseech you, I beg all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add one? I'll just add one point.
Really
right?
quickly, please.
This-
Thank you.
I'll make it quick.
Okay.
Just to follow up on this, we at the Boston area, we wanted to do the same thing to start with very early age. That's where we are coming up with a program, are coming up with an agenda. We call it ourselves as an International Basava Center. We want to bring there, we want to start this kind of activities. I just want to make sure that we are trying to do that. We are not there yet, but we want to start in some place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So with that, we are going to have to close this. This was the Virashaivism in America discussion, and I think it went really well. And hopefully, just to point out a few things, tomorrow we are having the Anubhava Goshti. This was segregated between adults and youth. But tomorrow during the Anubhava Goshti, everyone will be there together. So we urge all of you to come, express your opinions, debate, just like the Sharanas did. Also, another thing, if we could have more participation that's equal across the board, that would be excellent. We had, just to put it out as a matter of fact, we had 2 women speak today, and to hear other perspectives, just like how the Sharanas encouraged, I think would be excellent. So everyone, please come prepared tomorrow with any sort of questions or concerns you have. With that, Trishul is going to tell you a bit about what the youth discussed and what their viewpoints were.
Hello, everyone. It sounds like you have all had a very good discussion here. No, one more round of applause to Varun for leading that round. We also had a productive discussion on the other side of the convention venue among the youth. And I guess how we formatted it was I asked a question, we let the youth discuss among themselves for a bit, and then they shared their answers to me back again. So I guess I'll go through the questions that I asked and some of the answers that I received. The first question that I'd ask is, how comfortable are we as Lingayats in America? And what are we comfortable with, what are we not comfortable with. And some of the answers that we got mainly, I guess, concentrated on the ideals of Veerashaivism versus the practices of Veerashaivism. They believe in the ideals. They believe in the idea of meditation, and the idea of finding that part of yourself that tells you what to do and kind of aligning your actions with that part of yourself. They believe in that. What they don't believe is that it must necessarily come through linga puja. The fact that it doesn't necessarily have to come through holding a black stone in your hand and meditating towards it. I can come through meditation through any numbers of means. One particular thing that was mentioned was a discussion with Ramzan Dargah last year, where essentially it opened the eyes of one of the members that being a Veerashaiva means that you can marry whoever, just like Baswana organized the marriage between the Brahmin and the low caste back in his day, that you can be whatever you would like. But they fear that the practices of Veerashaivism today don't reflect that. They believe that Veerashaivism has in itself become, so to say, a caste today, where we prefer to stay among ourselves, where we prefer to say that we should try to marry a Hindu, try to marry within ourselves, that marrying a Muslim would be not as entirely acceptable. And so, I guess going back to summarize the point of that question, they believe in the ideals, but believe that the practices have sort of twisted those ideals from their original meaning. Now, the second question we asked was, how is Veerashaivism relevant to you, and are there any recent experiences where you can identify the impact of Veerashaivism? And the two things that were mentioned in that discussion was that Veerashaivism and Baswana are prime examples of people who stood up for the little guy back in Kalyana, the people who were trampled upon by those in power. And they believe that that is particularly relevant to us living in the political climate of America today. It is sad to say that America is not completely equal in the way that biracially or like socioeconomically that many would like it to be. And that is something they felt must be addressed. And another thing that they felt was very relevant is Baswana saying, Kaya kave kailasa, work is worship. One particular example was one of our members said in her organization they do service work, but for some of the members, service work means fulfilling out those service hours so that they don't get in trouble with the people who are in charge. Whereas for others, like herself, it means doing the service because it's service, and doing service is a core tenet of Veerashaivism and a thing that you should just do as a person. And from there, we went into another discussion about, essentially the question was phrased as immigrant children, we're known to work hard. Our parents ask us to always go into the best colleges that we can, get the best jobs that we can. And the question that was asked was essentially, are we being raised to do service for the betterment of the community and for others, or are we being raised to seek the better for ourselves? And if it's so, is it wrong for our parents to want the best for their children? And the answers we got to that question were mainly that no, it's not wrong for our parents to want the best for our children. To say that they would like us to be a doctor or engineer or lawyer because it creates excellent stability for them is not a bad thing. That's good parenting. What they feel distorts the original philosophy of Veerashaivism is the discouragement that they receive for entering into other fields. For example, becoming a doctor or a lawyer or engineer at the expense of doing something else that they like. And the reason they feel this way is because they feel that as immigrants coming to America, the number one thing you're seeking, as some would believe, is stability. The fact that you want to gain a hold in this nation and bring yourself to par. But for them, they believe that's an unnecessary kind of consideration because they've grown up here. They feel they have that stability and would rather be allowed the freedom to pursue what they believe, knowing that it isn't necessarily if you take that hard work that you put into becoming a doctor, into an engineer or a lawyer, and put that into something else, that you will achieve something, that you will make something great of yourself and be serviceful to your community as well. They believe that should be more emphasized in their community. And thank you. And Varun will summarize the adult portion of this discussion.
So one quick announcement before we hand it off to the rest of the cultural programs. For tomorrow, the Anubhava Goshti, because our theme is Vachana, a guiding light, we're going off of Vachanas. So thinking of topics, controversial questions within our community that arise from Vachanas. So if you look in your convention bag that you received, Abhinav's been super awesome, and he's put in a copy of those vachanas that we'll be looking at tomorrow. It's a white paper, 8.5 by 11. If you don't bring those tomorrow, we also have copies, but please look over them and think about what you want to talk about tomorrow. And hope everyone comes. Thank you. Oh, yes, I completely forgot. So, if the youth want to know what the adults talked about, some of the things that stuck out was, the first question was, how is it being a Lingayat in America? And the first answer that we got talked about how this person felt spirituality and felt a connection only after she felt slightly uncomfortable at first, thinking about even converting to Christianity at one point. But later, through turning back to the Vachanas and looking to the core of Veerashaivism, she progressed to feel personally, she tells the Lord Shiva. And then we also had a few comments made on how emotional intelligence and workplace training relates in many ways to Veerashaivism. We had one concern brought up on how we're kind of all over the place right now. Jews in the community often start teaching their children from the Torah very early on how to read the Hebrew script as well. And we have Muslims doing that with Urdu and Arabic to read the Quran. So why don't we have that with Veerashaivism? That's kind of a problem there. We also had a question raised on, is it okay for Veerashaivas to eat meat? And is this a sustainable strategy for generations onwards, that they can choose whether or not they want to eat meat? And those are a few things. I'm really sorry if I missed anything out. I wasn't writing everything down. But if I missed anything out, please feel free to bring it to the Anubhava Goshti tomorrow. Thank you.